Hi, everybody. This is Richard Sachs. This is Lost Arts Radio, and we're back again. It's nice to see you. A lot happening. Things are evolving so fast. I feel like we should update things, once an hour or something like that, but we'll keep up as well as we can. And we recently had very good response from Julie Wentz being on the show, and she's doing a great program with Arizona Stands Up. The idea being, I think what she described it as is bringing back the constitutional rights of the people in the state as an example to people in other states and certainly in other countries too, with the idea that the basic rights, the natural rights as they've been called, that everybody has don't come from government. They don't come from the UN or any organization like that. You have them, since the beginning of your life, before you're born actually. And they just come to you, and governments can't take them away. That's why this country was started with the idea of unalienable rights. That means you can't declare that, we just have to take your rights away for a little while, and then we'll be sure we remember to give them right back. You can't do that if they're unalienable. Otherwise, they're alienable, and you don't have any, because anybody who wants you not to be free just declares an emergency. And so with that as the understanding of at least the theoretical foundation of this country as an example to others, with everybody possessing the same rights no matter what country they live in, still remains to be lived up to, but there's an opportunity to do that. And we're in a really unusual situation, environmental situation right now. I don't mean with respect just to what's happening to the poisoning of the air and water and land. I mean the environment of what humans are doing, trying to take away the unalienable rights that you have, no matter where you're listening from. And the justification of that is a terrifying pandemic that is killing just about everybody in the world. And the way they know that is they got this test that tells you everybody is dying of this, even if they die in a car crash or anything. If they test positive, supposedly according to this test, that they actually died from the disease. And the only thing wrong with that, it sounds like a quite reasonable idea, but the test is not even a test. And we'll get into that hopefully in the short time that we've got, which, if there are no numbers to quantify anything about what's going on right now, it's really hard to maintain the idea of a terrifying pandemic. But we'll have a chance to get into that. And our guest tonight is somebody I was really hoping would be willing to talk to us. And Julie once had mentioned that she had this great ally who was helping her project and doing a lot of other great work, a very conscious doctor that is doing a lot of work for humanity, Dr. Henry Ealy. And he fortunately agreed in the middle of his intense schedule to come on the air and talk with us for a little while. It should be a great conversation. And instead of reading the paragraphs of his bio, I want to spend some time on really explaining where he started all this, going back maybe from before it officially started in its present form, how he got interested and what's going on now and what's hope for the future. And that should be a challenge to cover in the time we've got, but we'll see what we can do. So welcome, Dr. Ealy, and thank you. I really appreciate your being here.
Thank you, Richard, for having me on the program. I'm really honored to be here. I've been telling folks, like we spoke about a little bit yesterday, what's been the silver lining in this year has been the connections that we are creating from people from an incredible array, a diversity of backgrounds that we've been programmed and taught that we are antagonistic to each other, but that we are actually really connected. And one of the things that I was talking with my son about today is that it's really funny that progressives and conservatives alike seem to have an open heart and an open ear to the research that myself and my team have been publishing, and these seem to be very divergent groups, but they actually agree on this, and it's been very reassuring and it fills up the hope cup.
There is common ground. We don't have to consider each other as enemies.
Right.
Just to explain, since I didn't really go into your bio or anything like that, I want to give people a feeling where you came from, not just what you're working on right now, papers you're involved in and stuff like that, but how did you get into this whole kind of concern for the earth and what you could do for it?
Well, I think the first thing that I want the audience to understand is what I'm doing, everybody can do. I'm nobody special. And what's so important about that thought process is that it makes me dependent upon collective work and us coming together and seeking these common grounds.
Right.
I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. I've been in practice working with people for 2 decades. Prior to that, my previous life, I was a database developer and data analyst. And prior to that, I was a mechanical engineer. I really love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. And
Right.
we saw one of the things I wanted to be able to do for people this year was there was a lot of fear right off the bat in January, February developing. You could feel the tension among us. So I felt like what I wanted to do was really embrace the aloha spirit and be reassuring to people as much as the data would allow me to, but I wanted to make sure we were presenting all parts of the data. One of the big problems I've had throughout this is we talk about cases and fatalities, but we never talk about recoveries. We paint these pictures and these images of the worst situations, but we don't consider the kids that have committed suicide and the people who've lost their businesses.
Right.
We don't think of the families that weren't able to be present when their loved one was passing away, and that weighs on me a great deal. I couldn't imagine having one of my parents passing away right now and me not being able to be present at their bedside. Because somebody
and that's
told
what's
me,
happening commonly everywhere.
right? So I have a pretty extensive background. I've founded a school on holistic nutrition, Energetic Health Institute. We're very proud of what we do. We feel like we graduate high caliber professionals who can become board certified. And what we're doing, our entire ethos is really summed up in 2 questions. Am I working hard? And is my heart in the right place? And my duty to my fellow Americans, my global community, is to make sure that I can answer yes to those 2 questions every day and in everything that I do. That yes, I'm working hard, and yes, my heart is in the right place.
Where's the school?
It's online, so we're in the ether. We're It's we're a nonprofit, and we are technically located in the state of Oregon, in the United States, but we have students all around the world.
And what do they get board certified in?
Board certified in holistic nutrition. We teach folks how to really use natural medicines, especially food and herbs and nutrients as the medicine they're intended to be.
So if somebody wants to become a student or find out about it, where do they go?
Go to energetichealthinstitute.org and just fill out a scholarship application, and we'll meet you. There's no obligations. We love building relationships, people. That's what this is all about.
When you say scholarship application, that kind of implies like some special deal on the cost of getting in or something like that.
Exactly. We're very lucky to have some sponsors that assist with us, so we can ensure every new student gets at least some scholarship, so we can keep tuition very low for the students that have to pay tuition.
Okay, that's great. And what kind of, one of the reasons, there's so much to talk about, we need at least 10 hours for this discussion. So I'll try to talk at high speed as much as I can. But so, right now, one of the things that people are interested in is that so many businesses are being destroyed systematically, and people are losing their income. They're reaching the end of their, most people don't actually have any savings, but they're like unemployment and stuff like that is running out. And so they're looking for other ways to make a living. If they graduate from your institute, what kind of stuff can they do to actually make a living that's connected with it?
Thank you for asking. They can work with clients. They can develop their own practice. They can work in a supportive role with licensed physicians. We have plenty of our graduates who are doing that. We have some of our graduates who are working alongside doctors in oncology clinics, cancer clinics, throughout the world, and they can write. They can do a lot. They can do their own seminars. They could start their own school. I would support my students doing that. There's a lot. It's really open ended, which is what I love.
It sounds great, because connecting a way to generate money that's actually not perpetuating evil That's a really good idea.
Right. Right.
Especially one that can be adapted to different people's situations and that sort of thing. So one of the things you're doing is teaching at that institute, I guess, right? One of your
Correct.
major activities.
Yeah, correct. I'm very blessed to have a incredible student body. We attract people with good hearts, and it's just a joy. It's an absolute love of my life, to be able to go into the school every day and work with the students. We just did a holistic nutrition masterclass that we do every week, but we just did one today, and we were talking and breaking down cases and teaching people how to think about healing, so that there's understanding there's more options than just what we've been told out there. And these options aren't voodoo. They're not hocus pocus. They're actually evidence-based options. And we need to make sure people understand that there is scientific evidence behind nutrition as a primary modality of healing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we can talk a lot about that. What other major things are you involved in right now?
Well, this COVID stuff has definitely become a huge part of my life. I work 2 jobs now. One I get paid for, one I volunteer. The COVID stuff I volunteer on, but I'm a part of a research team that's invested in, that's filled with doctors and nutritionists and attorneys and public health policy specialists and death reporting clerks and from all walks of life. Collectively, we've invested now at this point well over 15,000 hours of research collectively into this sprawling COVID topic. I was just able to support actually give testimony today for a resolution in a county here in the United States that passed a resolution protecting small businesses. I wanted
to know how that went.
It passed. There was a lot of consternation. They didn't like what I had to say. So one commissioner, who shall remain nameless and who I have a lot of respect for, didn't like what I had to say. He felt that my analysis of CDC and state health department and local county data that's published for everybody, felt that I was being misleading, but wouldn't say how I was being misleading. So I'm just going to surround him with love, logic, and light, and hopefully he wants to engage in a conversation with me, because it's okay to disagree, but I just hope we agree that it's not okay to be disagreeable when we interact.
That's a difference, yeah. I mean, if you can recognize that we're all on the same team, and we just want to find out what's true and beneficial, right? Then maybe we don't have to be as disagreeable. So he must have been one of the dissenting votes.
Yeah, he was a dissenting vote, and we knew, as suspected, he would be. You can't say the right thing to the wrong ear, and that's okay.
Well, you can. You just don't get a nice reception.
Well, typically, typically you don't. Right. But I still think it's so important for us to be kind to each other, even in the face of that. And it's challenging. I'm not going to front. It's challenging sometimes, but it's still like, is my heart in the right place? Well, if I'm being kind, even in those instances, then I can say to myself and to my ancestors that my heart's in the right place.
Exactly. And I feel like everybody's watching us all the time. It's nothing happens in secret, for real, But just so that people are up to speed on what you were working on in that meeting, that was for a small town in Oregon, right?
A county,
A county, sorry. And what were they trying to actually pass? It was a resolution for something.
It was just a resolution to that businesses could present if they were fined by OSHA or if they were fined by a state law enforcement agent and had to go to court to contest a fine, that they could present it to the presiding judge and say, hey, here's proof of me doing everything I could do in my power in good faith to follow these orders, but these orders are putting me out of business. And so I need you to waive the fine. It's just a protection.
It's just like a feeling of support. It's not a law.
Right. It's not a law.
But it could show that, my county's behind me.
It's exactly what it is. It's a vote of confidence for businesses in the county. It's exactly what it is.
Now, at your meeting, you mentioned before that you also had some conventional, I assume, health department people showing up, right? Yeah,
they declined to attend and speak today, and that's that's fine. That's their right to do so. We
Right.
suspect that we're going to get a chance to interact with them in hopefully a productive way. Again, I'm just going to keep putting out what I want, into the world, but hopefully
Not what you're worried about
share.
could happen, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to give that energy. I'm going to give energy that we're all humans and that sanity will prevail.
That'd be great. I think that would help a lot of things. So, and that's one major theme, of communications is being very familiar with the educational system for right now, for example, public health. What insights have you gotten up to now for how to have harmonious communication with people coming from that background?
Well, I think we rely on the same rules we have for interacting with the people we love, and that is make sure we're listening, but not just listening to respond, but listening to understand what they're saying, where they're coming from, because there are some valid concerns on that, that I totally resonate with. But I think then when in our communication, it's so important to, one, make sure that what we're saying is verifiable, right? So that we can, this isn't coming from me. I didn't make this up. This is my findings.
Right.
To make sure we sandwich things, that we compliment, offer our insights or corrections, and then compliment on the way out, so people know it's not a personal attack. It's just, hey, we have a difference of opinion. That's okay, but let's see where we have common ground, because we're not doing enough of that in our conversations to explore where's our common ground on this issue.
Yeah, too much of it moves into the ad hominem idea of showing that the other person's a terrible person rather than looking at the issue you're supposed to be talking about.
Well, that's when they won, that you've won. They at the end started to attack my education, and that I'm just a lowly naturopathic doctor.
Exactly, not even medical. Actually, the naturopathic colleges are moving very much into merging with the medical right now.
Yeah, there's a movement in our field that's called green allelopathy, and that's the problem. Is we're like, look, what we do when we do it well is valid and stands on its own. We don't need Big Brother to validate us. I don't need a pat on the head to help someone.
Exactly, and I would think that one challenge you would have working with the conventionally oriented people is that they're giving references that are government agencies that are not supposed to be questioned.
Yeah, edicts. Fortunately, our country was founded on challenging the status quo. It's in our DNA. So when we have organizations giving edicts and that you get vilified if you question them, those edicts aren't coming from a place that's from the right place in the heart.
Right.
So it's easy to also be seduced into wanting to now fight. And my energy has this year become, and I've had some points when I've wanted to fight with people over this, and my energy though has become, I'm not going to fight with anyone over this, because what we have found and what we share is verifiable. It doesn't need, facts don't have feelings. Data doesn't have feelings.
Right.
It just needs to be verified. That's all. And if we verify it, then it's what it is.
Usually the people coming from the so-called conventional point of view are saying they're relying on science. almost exclusively. But science actually is based on questioning everything.
Yes.
There are no authorities that you can't question.
Whenever I hear, there's two things I listen for, Richard, when I'm listening to highly intelligent people talk, and especially we've heard, believe me, you're talking, there's PhDs all over the place this year, right?
Yeah.
So intelligence isn't the question, and acumen is not the question. But when I hear someone say, I believe, and then they talk about something scientific, I'm like, well, you're not talking about science anymore, because science isn't in the realm of belief. It's in the realm of verification and reproducibility.
Yeah. Right.
And the other thing I'll hear people, say is just, I think. And when I hear these things, it's like, okay, whatever follows tells me that you can't verify it. So we're not talking about science. So that's when you hear people say, well, the science is settled on this. And it's like, well, hold on. Science is never settled. That's not how science works.
Yeah, I think people can understand that, if it's presented simply like that, because mostly they would have to, it seems in most cases, say that they agreed. Science is this constant exploration. I know what's true.
That's what I just wrote a little piece yesterday on what I love about science, and I was like, man, I never thought I would write something like that on, but I had that exact thing that you just said, Richard. About it's about it. What I love about it is it's the exploration into the unknown, and it's a courageous exploration into the unknown.
Right.
It's not a fear-based, oh my God, if I get this, I'm going to die kind of mentality.
Yeah, it's also not, it's feeling happy when you find out that you're wrong, because you're getting a step closer to what's true.
Exactly. There's no. What did Thomas Edison say? I wish I could fail faster, because he knows he could get to the right answer that way.
Right.
And
people were saying, "Look at all your failures. You must feel terrible." He says, "No, everyone's a step toward the right answer."
Right. And you can question his relationship with Tesla historically, and motives for that, but.
Details. But he did come up with some good things.
But it's a good quote. Yeah, that's a good thought.
Right. Yeah, it would be amazing if schools and universities could absorb that idea, which may eventually happen, right?
Well, we have to make sure we maintain financial independence in order to do that. You can't.
That's a real big deal.
It's becoming increasingly more difficult to maintain independence of thought without financial independence along with it.
That's a huge issue. That's why I was asking you, what can your graduates do? Mm-hmm. Because if, the worst situation is for everybody to be dependent on universal basic income, and it's being sold as utopia, as those things always are. And people don't realize they kind of left out the middle part about how it's conditional on total acceptance of whatever they say you should think.
Yeah, you give up your unalienable rights
exactly
to enter into that agreement. And if somebody wants to do that, that's fine. But I think the welfare system has proven, and what it's done to the Black community in this country from late 1960s onward, it's proven itself to be an abject
especially
failure.
After Kennedy was killed.
Yeah.
It got really bad.
It got horrible. For what some folks would consider my people, that's never the way we were raised. Like my grandmother, we traced our lineage back, my sister did, to 1835. The oldest family member we can trace right now, 1835, a marriage license from two slaves, and they had to ask to be married. That's what slavery is. And my grandmother was always staunchly self-reliant and independent, and I will do for myself, this holy Henry David Thoreau kind of ethos.
Yeah, I really like that feeling.
Like,
and so there's a big step forward in trying to make slavery universal now.
Right. And that's exactly right. It's like, well, let's start with segregation. Let's pit people against each other and label them and get them fighting. And then you'll be more apt to want to put on these invisible shackles, no thanks.
Yeah. And there's so many splits between people. It's, race and gender and age and economic class and religion and every possible way you can be split, so that you won't remember, wait a minute, weren't you all like humans? The same basic family. Right.
Yeah, it feels like the Phoenix. It feels like we're going through one of those Phoenix cycles right now, where we're coming to the end of a cycle, and then we'll have a reemergence. And I think the reemergence is going to be glorious for everyone.
Yeah. As soon as that can happen, that would be really good.
Yeah, yesterday would be great.
Right. I'm sure it'll be at the right moment when we are ready to appreciate it.
Amen.
But so your second full-time job connected with the COVID stuff that you're describing, is that mostly being like giving testimony and things like that at meetings?
Well, it's morphing into that now. What it started out on March 12th, I started collecting all the data from Italy and from South Korea, so I could get an understanding of what we could expect here in the United States. And what we could expect was that the highest risk folks were going to be over 60 with pre-existing conditions, comorbidities.
Okay.
And that's exactly what's happened here. There's nothing out of the ordinary that we've seen here. There's nothing extraordinary about this, okay?
Right.
From a data perspective. And then what we started seeing was the languaging coming on, which started concerning me, this whole flatten the curve, and then we'll let you back out. All right.
Yeah, it's only going to be 2 weeks, though.
Right. And then we have to extend this out a little bit more, so you got to make this sacrifice because we don't want to kill grandma accidentally. Okay.
Exactly.
And then it morphed over the summer into, if you don't wear a mask, you might kill someone. And I'm like, wait a minute, time out.
Yeah.
If I don't wear a mask with nobody around me and I'm not exhibiting any symptoms, what you're telling me is I might commit manslaughter? What an that's
what you have to understand is that you cannot be sick and be deadly sick. And that if you have no symptoms, you're really dangerous to everybody else. And this idea of the asymptomatic carrier, which the WHO retracted,
yes,
without letting very many people know.
Yes,
and they think that it's still in force.
Well, and that's the CDC conveniently moved from asymptomatic theory, which was just a theory that was proposed and it was garbage the second it was proposed, to what's now called pre-symptomatic transmission, meaning we just aren't showing symptoms yet. It's like
everybody's about to get really sick.
Oh, right. So what most Americans don't know and most people around the world don't know is that in medicine around the world, we're taught that you have three things for a viral infection. And that is you need to have symptoms. Symptoms tell us which type of test we need to order. In this case, a viral load test where we pull some blood and we see how much of the virus is there. Yes. And then the third thing, which is antibody testing. If you're testing IgM antibodies and they're positive, but your IgG antibodies are negative, that means you are contagious with a viral load and symptoms. And if you test IgG and you don't have symptoms and you don't have a viral load, guess what? You have natural adaptive immunity. Your body has figured this out, and now you don't need an artificial infection, otherwise known as a vaccine.
Now, to do an accurate antibody test, do you not need a sample of the virus that you're supposed to be looking for antibodies for?
So let's just jump into the deep end here, quick. Yeah.
We only have a few minutes, so I thought we should try it,
There's a very interesting report I'd encourage your audience to check out. It's the Corman-Drosten review report. It was done by a number of very acclaimed molecular biologists and professors from Europe. I think there's about 21 people listed on the paper with all their credentials, and it's substantial. And it's a detailed paper. But at the end of the paper, they found 10 problems with the PCR testing. And one of the major problems they found was that it's not based upon a live virus. It's not based upon a virus that they were able to culture. It's a synthetic, computerized, for lack of a better description, 3D print of what they think the viral sequence is.
The translation of that is the computer actually made up most of the virus, right? Filling in the blanks that they didn't have any live samples of.
Exactly. And so all of the testing is based upon that. These vaccines that are being rolled out are apparently based upon that. I haven't delved in as deep as I want to yet, so I'm going to reserve my comment on that.
Okay.
But when I looked at the original PubMed research coming out of China saying that, hey, we've isolated the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and what's concerning for me in that process was there was no verification by any other teams in China, let alone in other countries. That it's like we're all just going to have to take this word of this one of these scientists that this is what the viral genomic sequence is, and move on with it. And I think that is such an opportunity for corruption. At the very least, the optics of doing that are horrible. That's not the way science is designed to work.
Ideally, you really want a sample of the actual material you're trying to test for, right?
Right. You want a live culture, which means in a viral situation, they would take the virus and introduce it to a supportive cell, a cell that can host it. In this case, hopefully a human cell. Right. And you would have enough cells in the Petri dish so that you could transport that virus to other labs, so the labs can then test it and say, yes, that viral sequence you're publishing, we've confirmed it. Let's put it in the international database on
and that's exactly what this patient has.
Right.
And then you have a quantitative test so that they don't just have some minute trace of it, which is irrelevant. Right. They have to have enough to make them sick.
Well, what's interesting, I think we're all getting a great lesson and education on PCR testing. And the person who designed PCR testing and won a Nobel Prize for it, Dr. Carrie Mullis, who unfortunately is no longer with us.
Right.
He was point blank. This is not a diagnostic tool. This is a process of elimination tool. That if you have some symptoms and you want to get a quick, inexpensive look at what's going on a tissue sample or a sample of mucosal fluid and see what's in there, you can run a PCR test. And then what that allows you to do is it allows you to use other tests to confirm.
Quantitative tests.
Right. This is exactly how this test is not supposed to be used, but we are continuing to use it that way. And even though on July 17th, the CDC moved, and this is on their website, but they moved from a test-based methodology, which is all you need is a test to confirm, to a symptom-based methodology, which confirms what the World Health Organization did, which says that if you don't have symptoms, you're not sick. You're not, well, let me say this. If you don't have symptoms, you're not contagious. Because that's what we're concerned about, transference of this this virus to other people, especially people in high-risk demographics.
Well, and didn't Carrie Mullis, the inventor, also say basically the reason that you don't use this test as a diagnostic test is it'll find anything in anybody.
After a certain number of cycle amplifications, photocopies, yes, that's why you get, this is where you get a little bit of fuzzy depending upon the person who has familiarity and expertise. But the general consensus is that if you're amplifying the sample material above 30, 35, even Dr. Fauci says above 35, it's pointless. If you do that, you are exponentially increasing the rate of false positives. Every amplification you do over 30. Okay, so why don't we set the cycle threshold at 30 or even a little bit lower and then use the test? Well, if you go to the document that the FDA published on December 1st, it's showing that the recommendation, the guidelines for nationwide for amplification is set at 40. Well, why would you do that? That is, all you're doing is setting the stage for false positives. And my suspicion, we've seen in a couple states what are called sporadic epidemiologic linkages, meaning these are people who are testing positive, who we have no known contact with. We can't tell where they contracted this, right? Well, why are sporadic linkages so astronomically higher than every other contact? Well, maybe because, and why is that? Why did that happen in October? I don't know. And then, but you start going, okay, why is this happening? And then you go, is it possible that those are false positives? It is. Now, does that mean that I'm definitively saying that? No, I'm not. But
You're
it's
saying
possible.
You don't know. Right.
I'm saying it's worthy of investigation because that's what science does. Science asks questions.
So there's two issues with the test. One is the cycles. Number of cycles.
Yes.
Since if you run it up high enough, you can show everybody positive.
Pretty much.
Which would be useful if you were trying to do that. But if you wanted to know, it would just skew everything. But the other issue is that you need to know specifically, conclusively what you're actually looking for.
Right, and that's where you start looking at the reference material. What's called the reference material. The reference material used is this 3D. It's this idea of what we think the genomic sequence is. It's not the reference material that's pushed out by GISAID and another organization that's supplying all the reference material to calibrate all these things around the world. It's not based upon a live, fully sequenced virus, a what would be called a natural virus, something that, hey, this came in, we isolated the tissue, it's in the tissue right there, look, it's right there, we can see it, and now let's build our test and our reference material based upon that, not based upon this manufactured genetic sequence that has been entered into the International Database of Virology.
The other thing that goes with that is that just recently, I'm not sure, I should remember the source, but it's not in my mind right now. It was verified that the overall deaths, cumulative deaths of each year for the last 4 years, including this one, haven't shown any increase.
I did confirm something last night. We went into CDC Wonder, which is an archive database that gives you data through 2018. You can also do some research into Dr. Genevieve Briand from Johns Hopkins University. She published a paper on this, and she says very firmly she stands by her analysis that there are no excess deaths this year.
That's what I was trying to say, yeah.
Right. So, because this is the new debate, right? So it's always, they keep the goal, like the ad hominem, we keep moving the goalposts on this debate, right? So it's this. First it was asymptomatic transmission, or first it was, we don't want to overwhelm the healthcare system. And then we have medical frigates sitting out in New York Harbor, empty. And
which no one used, yeah.
Which nobody used. And then we get into, now we're moving the goalposts from asymptomatic transmission to, this is why you have to wear a mask and social distance, to now let's move the goalposts again to this notion of excess deaths. So when you go in and you look at CDC Wonder, which has an archive of every cause of death, you see, and let me pull up the exact number for you if I want to make sure I'm quoting this properly. Okay, so CDC Wonder, I just did this today.
And remind me of if there's a site that this is on, because I totally.
It's the CDC. Yeah, it's CDC Wonder. Anybody can access it. It's public domain.
Okay. Got it.
So in CDC Wonder, all causes of death totaled for 2018 totaled 2,839,205. That's
in the U.S. Is this U.S.?
Okay. U.S. only. Yeah, U.S. only. Okay. So 2.8 million is what we had in 2018. As of December 9th, according to the CDC and their provisional records through the National Vital Statistics System, what we have, give me 1 second, just pull up the exact number for your audience. What we have through the 9th, what we have through December 9th is 2,703,232. So we are right on par with what we expect to be the final count at the end. So we're not seeing any excess.
With basically 3 weeks to go.
Right. We're not seeing any excess, anything that we could construe as excess deaths. I think what's important to keep people in mind of as well is, as of December 9th, COVID fatalities, and of course, this is a very liberal definition of what a fatality is. COVID fatalities make up, even with that incredibly liberal definition, only 9.6% of the total fatalities in this country from all causes.
9.6?
9.6% of all the fatalities so far in 2020 have been associated with COVID.
That sounds like a lot to me. That means 1 out of every 10 people who dies, including car wrecks and everything, died of COVID. And yet there's no excess.
Right, but there's no excess. But that's where you get into this thing of, now they're subtly changing the language from COVID caused to COVID associated.
Which there's a presumption that it's cause if it's associated.
Right. Let me share a story, because I think we have a lot of these stories, sadly, this year. But I have an employee whose mother passed away last week.
Okay.
Her mother has been in a really poor state of health for a number of years. Diabetes, cardiovascular decline, dementia, you name it. She's beyond the normal life expectancy of 78 years of age. My employee was working with her nutritionally, and that we think that's why she got some extra years, which was great.
Sure.
But now she's at this end point. She's having trouble breathing and everything, so they're worried about COVID. They take her into her physician. The physician says, "Listen, I've done a chest X-ray. This isn't COVID at this point, but what I can tell you, sadly, is that her aorta is starting to shred." This is his words, from the heart. It's separating from the heart.
Okay.
So he says to the family, he said, "Look, I'm going to tell you honestly, if I operate, she's going to die.
Yeah.
And if I don't operate, she's going to die. This is what's in front of you." So the family decided to put her in hospice care. She was put in hospice care, and they ran another PCR test apparently on her for some reason.
Yeah.
The test came back positive. They didn't show the family the positive result, but the test apparently came back positive. And of course, mom died.
Right.
A few days later, And on the death certificate, they listed it as a COVID-caused death.
Yeah, that is common.
And that's the problem we have with the certified death reporting. We're doing something vastly different than we've done for the last 17 years, and we're doing it exclusively for one infectious disease, the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Right.
And what's so crazy about it is you don't even have to have a definitive test, positive test to show it. It just dominates all of it. And that's where a lot of authors and researchers are starting to say there's no excess deaths. What there are miscategorizations of cause of death.
That's a really big deal. I think if people could understand that one point, they'd have a lot of insight into what's happening.
Well, if our research based upon the admissions of the CDC that the average, that 94% of all certificates of death have shown on average 2.6 pre-existing conditions, which means that those are and have always been and should be the cause of death.
Right.
COVID, if it's positive, could be listed as an initiating factor, sure, but that's supposed to be left to discretion of the person filling out the form, okay?
Yeah,
because they know the medical history. Well, if that's the case, that means that there is a potential, Richard, that we are overestimating or have miscategorized fatalities by upwards of 94%.
In fact, CDC said that, right?
They did, but now this
indirectly.
This is where we move the goalposts and get into an argument, over what that means, right? Because most people don't know the depth of the 2003 guidelines and how we do everything for the last 17 years, right?
Right.
So where that takes us to is saying, okay, well, let's play around with numbers a little bit here, and let's say, okay, there's this many fatalities that you're reporting. You're saying there's 300,000. Well, we're saying that, what if 94% of those are, in the worst case scenario, are miscategorized? If I do 300,000, I'm pulling up my calculator real quick, times 0.06, that means that there are roughly 18,000 fatalities directly caused by COVID in that group of 300,000. Right. So that means that there's no excess deaths from what we're seeing data-wise right now, but that we have a miscategorization of upwards of 280,000 fatalities.
We've been told that COVID can cause heart attacks, and therefore most of the heart attack deaths are actually COVID if they test positive for it.
Well, we've had people get hit by a motorcycle or
I remember
by a bus. Yeah, I mean, and you're just like, that's not, and so then I step back and I go, okay, look, we're not going to be able to definitively prove that without freedom of information requests and detailed looking through everything. So that's not a hill that I'm going to stand on, but it's something that I want to make sure people are aware of, that there's this potential out there, but I'm not going to be definitive with it because I need those records to prove it. But what I can say to folks is let's stop looking at COVID cases and fatalities as a lump sum. Let's start looking at it by age demographics, because it's so easy to see where our high risk group is. They're 65 and older with pre-existing conditions. And let's target, focus, personalize our compassionate attention to protecting them while not creating collateral damage in the low risk groups. There's a way that we can make it work for everyone, because I think we all agree on some level, I hope we do, that the blanket policies, the one size fit all, it just hasn't proven itself to be effective.
Well, it's like what you said your employee did for her mother. She was able to focus on her and help her live longer and better quality of life while she was alive, things like that.
Exactly. And I think the thing that was sad for me in that instance, Richard, was that she wasn't able to be next to her mother while her mother was passing. That's the tragedy. We're all going to pass at some point. Right. But not being able to be next to the people you love because someone won't even give you the right to sign and say, yes, I acknowledge the risks. I waive any right to sue you if something happens to me. I want to be next to my mom. Done.
Right.
Then we're done.
Yeah. And you see these sheets of plastic and glass and plexiglass and everything separating people. And
Yeah, it's just
there's this special machine where you're each wrapped in plastic and you can hug each other through 3 different sheets of plastic and say whatever you want because you can't be heard anyway. So
yeah, it's preposterous. It's like, look, there's nothing about life that has ever been a zero risk proposition. That's
well, you look at something like tuberculosis that has a really high death rate,
right?
And nobody's shutting down anything because of that. It's also very contagious,
and it's actually a true pandemic.
Yeah,
as is HIV. You go to the World Health Organization site, and you'll see what those are. Those are legitimate pandemics.
But they don't stop normal life.
We don't, right? And we don't ask people to mask while making love either, do we?
Yeah, or underwater or anything like that.
Right, exactly. Put on your just going snorkeling, put on your mask. Well,
that's one glasses? Really nice thing about most of these declarations is that they so far don't make you wear your mask while you're swimming.
Right, exactly. There's the safety. We got to grow gills.
Right, right. Oh, well, in the little bit we have left, we should mention at least the mask thing is important for a couple of reasons, and this is the focus of a lot of mandates on local, state, and not federal yet, but depending on what happens with the final resolution of the election, which is really not decided yet,
Agreed.
It could be a national mask mandate for that. The reason that I say that this is important is not because it's probably going to kill you right away to wear a mask, but compliance with that has health damaging effects that have been documented by cutting down oxygen and increasing CO2 and having gum and dental problems and things like that, but more psychological, especially kids growing up with the idea that you really should never look at someone's face. Right. That could take a long time to work out. But more important than that, I think, is that the compliance psychology will very quickly, starting now, be applied to the fact that everybody should have the new vaccine.
We've seen that. I the one thing that really stood out for me with the approval of the Pfizer vaccine was that the military, for the first time in military history, is saying that they are not going to require their men and women, our brave men and women in service to the country, to get it, that they're going to let it be optional for them.
Wow, that's incredible. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, that's incredible. That has never happened. I mean, when you enlist, you sign your body over to the government.
They got the anthrax shot, and 11,000 of them died from that.
Well, that's what, and this is where we have to. And listen, I want everybody to understand something. Because this is always a very polarizing and potentially incendiary conversation. Mm-hmm. And I've been attacked as being anti-vaccine and all this other stuff. The labels, let's separate folks. Sure. Let's segregate everybody up. And I say, look, I am pro-vaccine. The theory of introducing a weakened infection to the body and letting the immune system that's hopefully properly nourished beat up on it after it's been double-blind placebo tested, and after we have independent oversight of the whole process, including surveillance, and that vaccine manufacturers cannot be immune from civil litigation.
That's a big one, right?
And that it'll never be forced on you. I'm on board. I'm on board with that.
Yeah, there's a couple of big points. The voluntary aspect complies with the Nuremberg Code.
Right, exactly.
And the long enough testing period and the honesty about side effects and all that would change the whole picture completely.
And the thing that we're seeing really compromised over, at least this is my opinion on it, is we're seeing that we're giving oversight to the company. That's wrong. We're saying the company could make mistakes, and there's no recourse for a citizen to be able to address those mistakes, because what a lot of people don't understand about civil litigation, they see the money that has to be paid out, right?
Right.
But they don't understand what that does is it launches additional investigations into the company, additional investigations into the product that often results in the company recalling their product.
In a normal situation where there's no immunity, right?
Right, and then improving their product.
There's an incentive to improve.
Right. That the ability to sue a company is our oversight of the companies.
Right.
And it's something we can't give up. But it was taken from us in 1986 in 42 USC 300 code. And it's specifically, if people want to look it up, it's 42 USC 300 AA-11 and 42 USC stands for US code 300 AA-22.
That was signed by Reagan.
Signed by Reagan, authored by Henry Waxman, California.
Right, exactly. And a lot of people think, well, in fact, Bill Gates, and there's so much more. I hope we can do a follow-up to this conversation at some point.
Sure.
But Bill Gates was saying, that when he was asked about the effects, and unfortunately they use this term side effects, but it's just the effects that may not be that great. And what happens, is it really safe? And he's saying, well, the CDC is the gold standard. And of course it's safe, and they'll guarantee it. And people think that the CDC does testing, and they don't.
They don't do independent testing. They rely on the testing from the vaccine manufacturers, who can cook the books however they want. Let's not kid ourselves about that. There are billions of dollars at stake. But I think what's important about a statement like that is, number one, the languaging. He's throwing around the word gold standard. Well, the gold standard is the golden rule. Do unto others how you want done.
That's a really good gold standard. Yeah,
that's the gold standard. So, what I would say about Mr. Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is, I want to openly wonder aloud just how incredible our world could be if the philanthropy was directed in a way that was not just optically compassionate, but genuinely compassionate.
It would be incredible.
Incredible.
I think that's one of the things that really attracts me to your work and makes me feel like it's so important, is that the spirit behind it is not combative. It's not to show that the other side is all bad people and idiots and all that. It's to show that, wait a minute, we don't have to. What if we didn't, go along with the fighting paradigm, and we said, we're humans living for a very short time on a planet where everything is, on the physical plane is unstable. Don't we need to actually help each other and do the best? Every one of us should be a philanthropist, with or without money. And, inviting these people who may have gone off in a different direction to, you could still be a real philanthropist. And there's no reason that it's too late. It could happen anyway, right?
Every day is a new opportunity to see the world for what it can be, other than what it's the direction that it seems to be going. And I would totally welcome that type of synergy that he and other people in his groups of enormous financial influence have the ability to create. And my intention that I want to put out into the world is to create that. Instead of, I'm not into the whole vilification of people. I believe in the triumph of the human spirit, and that we all can all have that moment, that biblical moment of falling off the horse and being blinded so that we could see the light. We can all have that. Yeah,
exactly. And there's no way to really condemn anybody, because that could be us. That could be, in a way, it is us in another form.
Right. So. We're this is one of the dopest things we could ever do, be born into this existence. But this is, I'm sure of it, a minuscule atom-sized fraction of the true grandeur of what existence really is. Yeah, I think that would be a good project to demonstrate that now. Well, I would love to chat with Mr. Gates, and I would welcome it, and not a debate, but just a chat. And I'm proposing a new kind of debate where it starts with the presumption that both people are on the same side. Right. The other side is defined by being willing to change or keep their opinion under the idea that they both want the truth, whatever is true, and they both have the same motive. I love that, and I love the idea of all discussions beginning with a discovery of common ground, because we all have common ground. It's gigantic. Mm-hmm. We've been doing such a great job at ignoring it with the encouragement of the media and fake education and entertainment and all that stuff, but it's still there. There's some complicity. So we got a lot more to talk about, but hopefully we'll continue that at the next chapter. Richard, is it okay if I plug our my team's peer-reviewed paper?
I want you to do that, and how people can follow what you're doing, what you think they need to support, participate in, anything like that.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for this conversation today. This is I'm feeling so incredibly hopeful and filled up in my heart. Just getting to talk to you, you chill me out, and I was running at about 130 miles an hour before I got on.
Yeah.
The first thing, if people want to connect with us, you can find our paper. I guess, Richard, I don't know, in terms of distribution, we can provide you with a direct link that maybe you can share with your audience to the paper.
Whatever is okay to give people. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, everything that we do, we consider to be public domain.
Okay,
so
great.
We're
what
transparent. Can I send you an email with that information?
Yeah, and we'll post it. In fact, this is a recorded conversation.
All right.
So we can put it on the screen. We can put it as a link below. We can do all that stuff.
Great. Well, I'll make sure my folks send you over the full packet and everything, so you can decide what you want to share. But it's public domain as far as we're concerned.
So everybody look at the screen, look at the links below, and you make sure not to miss anything that way.
Right. Start getting informed. I think the next thing is start getting involved. Once you've been informed, start getting involved. We have to understand that disagreements on social media is not being involved.
Right.
Those are just cantankerous discussion opportunities. That's not it. So I say contact your elected officials, contact the Department of Justice, contact your state health department, contact people, and start making your voice heard, but make it heard in a positive way. There's I know
we
there's
could do a whole show on that. How to do that.
We could. I'd love to show them, because we've collected all this information, and what we're working on is a website in partnership with some other, really incredible people that we think is going to give people not just the information, but how you do the next step, which is to get involved, to take that action.
Exactly. Not feel helpless. Right.
Right. You don't have to be, but action to be just conversating with somebody who is afraid and saying, hey, consider this.
Right.
I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm not attacking.
No, you can let them know you really understand how they feel too.
Right. I personally, I've learned a lot from the oppositional sides.
Yeah.
From the fear. And I have friends who are like, look, I'm going to be incredibly precautious because I have my mom who's in ill health living with me, and I just do not want to take that risk. And I'm like, respect. Tell me what I need to do when I'm around you, so I can honor what you're doing, and because I want that reciprocated to me on other things. You know what I'm saying? It's just like,
yeah, I do.
Yeah. So,
and we need to give people a lot of specifics on how to handle. This gets into the issue of communications in general.
Totally, it does.
How to make them lead to harmony instead of conflict.
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be ugly.
No, we make so many assumptions like that. May not necessarily be accurate.
Right. Well, 99.9% of the time they're not.
and what about how to stay up with what you're doing? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, we're creating a vehicle for that. Right now, I'm doing much more work behind the scenes. I do post on my Facebook page probably the most frequently, which is Hanalei ALA on Facebook, until we get a better distribution point. I do also post on our Facebook page through the Energetic Health Institute, typically once a week, some stuff in the interim until we get this this full distribution platform that we're really eagerly awaiting. It's a little bit overdue, but good things come to those who wait.
EnergeticHealthInstitute.org, right?
Org. You can go there. We have a COVID page on that website. On Facebook, you can check us out, Energetic Health Institute, and go to our Facebook page, or any of our social media distribution points, and you can get some information. And if you wanted to reach out to us, I would say send an email to Operation Phoenix Rising at protonmail.com.
Okay.
And that's a way that we can start collaborating and working together and be supportive. We're really in the business of supporting people who are taking action right now.
Operation Phoenix Rising at protonmail.com.
Yeah.
At protonmail.com. Okay. And you send us things to put on links on the screen, and we'll do that.
Absolutely. I'll make sure my team gets them to you tonight.
Okay. Sounds great. Hold on and we'll say goodbye in the break here.
Sounds good.
And hopefully see you back soon. All right, there goes Dr. Henry Ealy. And I think after getting the privilege of talking to him for a few minutes, a lot of doctors could learn quite a bit from Dr. Ealy, not so much in necessarily the number of technical papers he's read, which is a lot, and he's making good use of that, but in the spirit of what he's doing, it's so unusual to run into people in any profession, in my experience, that really understand that the spirit of what you're doing is what matters first priority. And you could be involved in any kind of work, or taking care of your family, or digging a ditch, or cleaning the kitchen, or working out on the street for some cause or project that you're doing. Anything, it doesn't matter. That what you're putting your attention on is what you broadcast, everybody being a generator of frequencies, every life form, and certainly every human. And if it's scattered, excuse me, if it's scattered and self-canceling and chaotic and broadcasting the frequency of fear, or thinking about people doing terrible things or being horrible individuals, or some of the activities that we know are going on the higher levels of power in government and corporations and various groups like that, if that's what we're absorbing the feeling of, that's what we're sharing with everybody. And I've seen people give talks on great causes, and their focus was on this really dark energy, and that's what the audience ended up picking up from the talk on the great subject. So getting to speak with someone like Dr. Ealy, who's conscious of that and actually working with it in legal proceedings, in his teaching in the school where that he started, all of the testimonial work that he's doing, all of that. It's a reminder that doesn't just apply to doctors, it applies to humans, anybody. And it's a way that we can open up much greater impact on the outside world, and it doesn't cost anything. It's really important work. So I'm encouraging everybody to get that from Dr. Ealy and get the reminder that it's the most important. It doesn't mean you stop anything else you're doing unless it hurts you or somebody. But you can do any kind of work or responsibilities, or work with family and friends and other things like that. It doesn't have to slow down at all. In fact, it makes that more effective and more efficient, more better results of whatever it is you're doing. So look at what you're broadcasting, become aware of it. Certainly take care of yourself on all levels. Physical level is really important. You can't just say, well, I'm spiritual, I don't care what I do to my body. It doesn't work that way, because they affect each other constantly. So learn, like what he's teaching about natural health in his school called, I wrote it down here, energetichealthinstitute.org. And there's apparently some kind of certification that people get going through that. He's got partial scholarships available. And I'm wanting to see people get ways of making money to make up for all the jobs that people are losing right now, and be able to work at something that they really care about, that they really like. And this, for some people, this might open up more possibilities for that. And it's an online school. So learn about that if you want to at energetichealthinstitute.org. If this spirit, well, when this, because I think it will, when this spirit spreads to more and more people around the world, the quality of life on this planet is going to change closer and closer to what it's supposed to be, what it could be, what its potential is. And you're the primary actor in that, actually. So many things we've been taught are the opposite of the truth. And one of them is that you're insignificant, you're weak, you can't run your own life without a team of experts, and you have to obey nonsense and all kinds of not true things like that. You're incredibly powerful. And it's not like you have to go out and beat everybody up. It's the opposite. It's becoming focused and bringing your energy in to become coherent and relaxed. If people just learn the deeper aspects of relaxing, they wouldn't even recognize their life anymore, because you can carry that with you while you're in the middle of intense activity, and it makes it more effective, not less. So the talk with Dr. Ealy brings up all these really important points. And I invited him actually to join us in Planetary Healing Club if he wants to, because it just struck me that's exactly what we're already working on in the private club with people that feel like doing that, learning about aspects of physical health that have been violently suppressed in our country and most of the world. But that's just a springboard, a starting point, so that your body is functioning as well as possible, and it's not distracting you too much by being in pain all the time and that sort of thing. Whatever condition we can still get back into, considering the damage we may have done up to now by making mistakes, you can still make it a lot better than what it is now by correcting certain things that we talk about. And then that sets the stage for consciousness work, which is where the real power is. And that's why we're taught that that means nothing, and it's physical force is the strongest force and all. None of that's true at all. And what the greatest fear of the negative power structure is that we become aware of who we are and start acting from that, which means it's not us on the personality level anymore. It's the original source or God flowing through you and taking over what you do, not just believing it. That doesn't make it. Well, I'm talking about going beyond that to experience what it is that people believe in reality. And that's the biggest taboo. And I've been looking at the taboos of the deep state and the global rulers for a long time. And there are a lot of those. You're not supposed to understand chemtrails or the fraud of climate change or the poison food or the damage from wireless radiation. Those are all taboos that you're not supposed to get into. But who you are is on another level, and completely. And so that's guidance. That means that's where you need to go, regardless of what else you're also doing. And it's an invitation. And time on this plane of existence is short for each chapter. And I'd like to see the chapter we're in turn out as well as possible. I know it will in the long run, but I'm concerned about that middle part where it could be unpleasant. And we have a great power to make that better. So I'm inviting you to step into your huge role of playing a part in that if you want to. So if you want to check out Planetary Healing Club, go to planetaryhealingclub.com and join us if you want, or do it on your own, or do it with friends or anybody that has this awareness that these subtle levels are what matters most, and that you're not your body, that's your costume. And that's why the race thing is so stupid, because you can take different costumes at different times. If you realize that a person of one skin color now could have been the opposite or a different one before, everybody's spirit, there's no, the conflict is all this powerful illusion that we're being taught by the people in media and education and so-called science and all this. That conflict is completely unnecessary and can't go anywhere unless you feed it your energy. And yeah, we need to fix some things, but you don't necessarily have to destroy an opponent. You can also wake them up if you're willing to do the work in yourself. You still do your physical self-defense or whatever is appropriate to the situation. You don't become helpless or anything. It's nothing like that. It's that whatever you're doing, this energy comes into it that changes your effectiveness. It's what the power structure is most afraid that you'll ever figure out, which is funny that they're afraid of it, because it would help them the most of anything too. They're not setting up a good future for themselves by doing all the things they're doing to the population right now, and they don't have to continue. If you're watching from a position in the monitors or the sensors or people developing things to poison the world and kill the life support system of the planet, you actually don't have to keep doing that. And it's better for you if you take a step in the direction of your own higher consciousness. That's real. It's not some silly belief. It's something that can transform your whole experience of life. And it's more fun than causing suffering to other people by a long shot. So just a thought in case you're interested in that, especially looking for everybody, but that includes people in power positions in government, the censors, the monitors, people in high corporate positions that are involved in doing a lot of damage and thinking, well, I just have to do that because that's where all the money is. And that's where the elite groups get together and they get to have a fun lifestyle because they're willing to sell out everybody. There are things that are more fun than that, believe it or not. And you're invited if you're brave enough. So think about it. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself. And this is our Sunday show. We have a show on Saturday too at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern, called Lost Arts Radio Live. It's about current events in some way. And then the club that I invited you to meets half an hour after that's over, Planetary Healing Club. And if you have questions, there's contact forms on our main site, lostartsradio.com. That also has links to all the platforms that we broadcast on and a lot of news stories and videos and interesting stuff that's all free. And then planetaryhealingclub.com, I told you, was a contact page. Also, if you have the means and you'd like to see us stay on the air for a while and activate some of the projects we have waiting for funding at the moment because we're not doing commercials, you can donate if you want to and if you have the means. LostArtsRadio.com has a donate button. So does LostArtsResearchInstitute.org. That's our nonprofit that runs everything. And so does subscribestar.com/LostArtsRadio. And we're on all these other platforms, Brighteon and other ones, at which you can see from our LostArtsRadio.com site. So that's about it. Hope to see you again soon. Stay in touch. Your comments and suggestions and questions are welcome. And we just want everybody to be okay. It's a really simple motive in this whole thing. That's it. So take care of yourself, and you'll, by doing that, set an example for everybody else and be able to give a lot more to the people around you. So have a great week, and we'll look forward to seeing you here again next time. See you soon.